Right, good evening. I'm Steve Moy from Market Square Heroes, and tonight we're interviewing Bravado. After the Legends of Rock, we're now moving on through to the future. Guys, welcome to tonight, and how are you all?
Hello,
we're very well, thank you.
Very good and raring to go tonight.
Good. So, in March you did Legends of Rock. How was that for you?
Excellent. We've always enjoyed doing that since we were first invited to go on it. It's a great weekend, isn't it? It's fantastic to see so many different rock type tribute acts and so many people going to actually see them.
Yeah, okay, so going back to when you started back in 2004, how did that originally concept come through, and where did you get the word Bravado from?
Well, we used to work together.
We used to work at the same place. So.
Pod and myself, and we had an idea that we might like to play Rush music.
It was the only one we had ever had, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's the only idea that we've ever had, and we decided to do one gig.
We kind of thought we'd gather. Well, I went to see Rush on the R30 tour, and I thought this is good, and I'd been thinking about it from before. I thought about the idea like a long time ago, and so I talked to him about it, and he said, "Yeah, let's do that and get it together, and we'll do a gig and see how it goes, and maybe
And so we did.
Maybe another one."
And so we did, and we played one gig, and then we rehearsed again,
and then another,
and then another,
and then. Trot, and 15 years later, or 15 years in October since the first rehearsals, when we thought we'd have a go and see what sort of a daft noise we could make out of it, and here we are. It's been rather strange, but extremely nice.
We started out, the three of us, as fans, all three of us, and I think with this kind of music, seriously, you have to be fans to be able to not to be able to physically play it, but
to stick with it,
to stick with it and to understand it, and you have to start off as being a music fan to be a musician to be able to do this kind of thing. And so I think essentially what we're talking about is the three of us here are basically fans who just actually play it, and
because being musicians is kind of what we do, then our way of being fans is to play the music. It just so happens that we've done it in front of a number of people who, ridiculously stupid though that may be, they keep coming back to watch us doing it again.
I thought I joined the Green Day tribute.
Yeah, that was a hard day. That wasn't
it was a difficult day.
First gig was tricky, but yeah, he's worn it very well, to be fair.
So, obviously the band's name's Bravado, so why did you come up with the word Bravado?
All the other good names were taken. No, that's about it, really, isn't it?
I think so.
There were some names that
we didn't.
They were like too clever, and some names that were too clever for their own good. But at the time when we started up, there were various bands named after various tracks, or involving various tracks in their name, and all the sort of more popular, moving pictures and all those sorts of phrases. They've all really been used by somebody, even if they weren't active at the time.
Yeah, and there's a kind of like and then after the fact, what happened 2 or 3 years into it, Pod and myself were talking, and we said, it's quite a good name because it actually does take a certain amount of it to actually do this.
If you're going
so there's that sort of like a little clever, but that wasn't intended.
No, it was kind of convenient, but when you think about it, Bravado is the name of a Rush track, but Bravado is also something that you've got to have a reasonable amount of to say, right, well, I'm going to stand up and play this exceptionally difficult, really great classic music that is very dear to a lot of people's hearts, and try and make a good show of it. So you've got to have a bit of chutzpah to sort of just stand up there. The fact that we've managed to get away with it for all these years is just a massive bonus, really.
I thought I joined the Green Day tribute.
There.
Yeah.
So when you're on stage, and you've got an audience in front of you, what do you see?
6 people. No, what do we see? I don't see a great deal because I'm I spend a lot of time with my eyes closed, and I wear small Geddy Lee sunglasses, so it's often quite dark. But really, what you actually see is I see these two guys, but you only see about the first row of the audience because of the lights.
Small venues, large venues?
It doesn't matter. You can only see the first row, 2 rows of people. And
I'm
that's
just
it.
smiling.
Usually, when you play some of the more classic numbers, there's a certain amount of difficulty because I'm singing, but they're all, the first 3 or 4 rows are usually singing back at me louder than I'm singing at them. And there's quite a few cases where there's been a few cases where I can't hear what I'm singing because they're singing so loud.
I concur.
You can't see anything, can you?
I hear them, but I don't see them, and so all I see is these two guys,
some drums,
backsides, and my drums, and that's my focus. But I hear them, and I know when we're having a good show, when we're not having a good show, but it's quite true what Pod's saying. You don't really sort of like see them, but I hear them, but the music and the nature of the music is so difficult to do. I focus on these two guys. That's what I look at. It's not pleasant. As much as I love them, it's not overly pleasant. But and then I've seen the backsides as well, so I don't even see their faces. Oh yeah.
Go on, spit it out. You wish we were doing Green Day, don't you? You wish we were
doing
the
Green Day tribute.
So for the set list that you guys devise and everything else, like who comes up with a set list and how regularly do you practice those set lists before you say this is what we want to do?
Well, we come up with set lists very often. What we'll do, we like to change the set around quite frequently. We prefer not to play the same set list twice in a row because a lot of people travel, no matter where we are. There'll be some people who came to the last show will see us again, and it's just become a bit of a thing. To keep it interesting for us and moreover interesting for them, we do like to swap things around a little or change it slightly. And what we'll usually do is we'll come up with, if we have a gap and we're going to, and there's a show coming up, we'll decide which of the songs we've been doing that we want to rest for a while, and then any songs that we either haven't done for a while we want to do again, and then sometimes any songs we've never done before that we want to start doing, and then usually I'll come up with, or between Neil and myself, we'll come up with a list that includes all those numbers, and then it's just a question of working it round and going, a bit tricky to start with that one, we need something more, something faster or slower or whatever, and then it's a bit zen, but it kind of comes out, and then pass it on to the other guys, and people go, yeah, that's all right, but I thought you said we were going to do.
It comes down to beats per minute sometimes, because you need to give light and shade and give people breathing space, because instead of hitting everybody with hard numbers all the time, especially some of the early stuff which is quite hard hitting.
Some of the stuff we do is actually quite a difficult listen, so we have to sort of put what I think of as life belts around them. So if we're going to do like some particularly tricky or deep dive kind of song that all the real dyed-in-the-wool aficionados will love, we need to kind of surround it with something a little bit lighter, so that all the guys who like Rush but don't know absolutely everything can get hold of that, and so that people are not isolated for too long, if you know what I mean. But then again, you find in some places that we're able to just do all the really crazy album tracks, the long stuff, and one of the nice things is that people do ask us to do the odd and awkward and not very frequently done stuff. I think they trust us to have a decent go at it. So some of the big long album tracks and medleys that we've done have been because people have gone, if anybody's going to play that, it's you guys, kind of thing, which is quite flattering, really. I'm thinking particularly of, for Rush fans out there, is Fountain of Lambeth, which is something which is pretty difficult and pretty much never been done. which we actually did at Rush Yukon last year. Last year. And I don't know if anybody else has ever bothered to do the whole thing, but we did the whole thing, and it was, everyone was crying, and and like, I never thought I'd live to see this performed live, kind of thing, which is, again, it's really flattering. But when you're going to do something like that, you've got to think very seriously about what you do around it, or before it, or after it. Usually go and have a sit down.
We kind of had from the very beginning, all of us, we had an idea that this is going to sound a little bit selfish, but it may as well just come out. We decided that if we do what we want to do, being Rush fans, then essentially the Rush fans will like it. Now that might be a little bit naive, but this is how and it's how we've always sort of done it. So we thought, in a kind of like little nutshell, what would we like to hear? So what we would like to hear, we do.
Yeah.
And that's basically
and leading on from that, if any one of us is not fond of something, then we don't do it. I find that bands who always play what they think people will like tend to end up not being very pleasing. I don't think there is such a thing as crowd pleasers. And what we tend to do is what we think we'd like to play next. So if we put a song in the set, we don't put it there because we think, oh, we better do that. We put it there because we want to play it, and we're not afraid to drop. There was a kind of 18-month period by anything from moving pictures. Nobody noticed. Or nobody said anything at least.
And we don't have arguments per se about in rehearsals or working out set lists, and Neil might suggest something or Paul might suggest
if
something.
If one of us isn't keen on it, if one of us doesn't want to, then
it's a three-legged stool.
Three-legged stool. You've got to have all three legs on the ground, and if one of them's not there, the whole thing falls over. So if we all go, oh well, let's do this, and somebody goes, then we don't do it.
Then it's over. We don't do it. So what Bravado fans can certainly expect is that every single thing that we actually play will be chosen by us because we feel that we should be doing it in real terms for them.
I totally understand where you're coming from on that, because it's what you want to do, and hopefully that will please the band. Hopefully it will please.
It has.
And it
over time, it has proven to be a good way to do it.
So of all the albums that Rush have produced, from the three of you, what would be the most outstanding albums that you could think of that you would like to do in full set?
Is that ones that we haven't already done before?
How many songs have we done now in 15 years?
It's about 60.
Full albums?
It is well difficult. To be fair, one of the albums that I'd like to do in full is what we did last year at Sheffield City Hall, which is Hemispheres. Like Hemispheres, so that was great.
I think the same thing. I don't know. I'm not speaking for Neil, but I think for me, I think to do Hemispheres in full was a real kind of like feat from my instrument's perspective as well. To be able to get through all that is a real thing. So I'd say that, but there's I mean, we're talking about Rush, so it's this vast thing. I'd say Hemispheres, yes.
I concur. American Idiot as well.
You're pushing this, aren't you, Neil? You really are.
So if people, obviously wrap up and things like that, so if people want to see you and come obviously to the gigs, where else could they find information on how to find you and everything else?
We have a very fine website,
which will be obviously advertised on the bottom.
Which will be scrolling along your screens now, viewers. planetbravado.com. Where? Just here.
Oh, there.
It's going under there, Neil. Can you see it? Right now.
planetbravado.com. and all the gigs and stuff are posted on there, and links to anything else that might be of interest. There's also a Facebook group. You run that, don't you? The Facebook Grump.
Yes.
What's it called? Is it that? Bookface?
Yeah,
something.
Faceache.
Faceache, that was it. Yes, sorry, I'm not modern enough. Yes, so there's also a Facebook group where events are posted and people chitter-chat and share photographs of each other in drunken rowdiness and singing along with Rush songs.
Bravado, a tribute to Rush.
Bravado, a tribute to
I've
Rush.
remembered something.
All right. Is that what the group is called?
Yes.
All right. I mean, I don't mean us.
That's
Because
Faceache.
obviously, yeah.
Fastbook.
Fastbook. Yeah, so there are those things. I don't think we've got anything else, any of those other modern things, but those are basically it. And anything new we get gets put up there. So that's where you can get it, guys.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you, and all the best to Market Square Heroes.
Yes, all the best to you all. You've been perfectly kind and courteous, and we have food now, don't we?
Yes, and
Yes,
now
we do.
food.
This has been Steve Moy with Market Square Heroes with Bravado.
Bye.